Good evening, folks. Good evening, folks. Hope that you can hear me well. My name is Charles Chambliss. I am the host of Let's Talk About It Now. I thank all of you for getting on the stream tonight. For those of you that catch the stream after it's live streamed, I hadn't particularly planned to do a stream tonight, but I came across a video of Mr. Bernard Robinson, the father, of Shanquella Robinson. And it struck a nerve in me because I've too experienced the death of a child. And I shared this in other streams in times past. Last year I shared it. I lost one of my sons. I have 8 sons, and I've often shared that. I have 8 sons, all of whom are adults and doing very well by the grace of God. But I lost one of my sons in March of 2014. And he too was the age that Shanquella lost her life. He was 25 years of age. He didn't lose it under the circumstances that Miss Shanquella Robinson lost her life. No, he lost it under circumstances beyond his control. It was a car accident, and he lost his life. But I can remember the knock on my door at about 3:30 in the morning. My wife and I were awakened out of our sleep. And from that point on, our life changed completely. Because now we had to endure every year, in addition to preparing for funeral services, in addition to preparing for whether we were even emotionally prepared to go or to embark on what was ahead of us. And I'm sure many of you that hear this stream that have lost a child or lost a loved one for that matter. It doesn't have to necessarily be a child, but if you've lost anyone, you know the tremendous pressure that's on you, unexpected pressure that you did not plan for, pressure that you did not expect, and it kind of hits you blindsided. What often happens in every family, and it doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, it doesn't matter whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Asian, it doesn't matter, Latino, it doesn't matter what your ethnic persuasion is. When this happens, it hits your family from the blind side to where you don't know quite how to react and how to respond under those circumstances, because now you're hurting and you're grieving over a loss. And what I find and what I have found and experienced in my life is that a lot of times during the grieving process, emotions are all over the place. Everyone's hurting in a different way. Each person trying to determine, or at least to dictate, how another family member should grieve. And oftentimes it's very abstract from how the individual that's doing the judging, because everyone grieves differently. Everyone grieves differently. Some people cry. Some people never cry. And a lot of times the person who never cries is interpreted as they don't care. And that's not necessarily the truth. People just simply grieve differently than others. And all too often, especially in a married situation where 2 individuals are married, they're a couple, they have a family, they lose a child. All too often, unfortunately, a lot of marriages are dissolved during that grieving process. And I'll tell you what I understand to be true in those situations. A lot of times, it's not because you don't love one another. It's not because you don't care. A lot of times it's because of a lack of communication between parties in the relationship and within the family at large, where they don't express themselves to one another in a transparent way as to how they are grieving or how they even need to grieve. Again, everyone grieves differently, you know? But unfortunately, what happens a lot of times, especially in relationships where the husband and the wife are no longer together and they find themselves at the crossroad emotionally with losing a child. The communication was already maybe strained before that. Now it becomes even more intensely strained after a death in the family. And I'm sure many of you can relate or you've experienced this yourself. And the very people that we need closest to us during these times of bereavement are usually the ones we tend to push away the most during our grieving process. Because again, like I said, it's a lack of communication with one another during the grieving process and attempting to understand that each of us grieve differently. So pain again is inflicted on those that who are currently still alive. More pain is inflicted as you struggle to get through your grieving process. So, this video that I ran across tonight with no intent, again, on doing a stream tonight, but it just triggered something in me because I experienced it. I experienced the loss of a child who, unfortunately, lost his life during a car accident, a circumstance beyond his own control. His life wasn't taken at the hands of someone who disliked him. He was well loved, but the results are the same. He lost his life, and he was 25 years of age. That was my son in 2014. I can only imagine under the circumstances that Mr. Bernard Robinson and Mrs. Salamandra Robinson are feeling and dealing with, knowing that someone hated their child so much or was envious of their child so much that they had everything in themselves to take her life. Even though her heart was so big, she again booked a trip, financed that same trip for those who she felt was her friend, only to find that she was in the company of those that cared nothing about her personally, and more importantly, cared nothing about her life. Did not care, nor did they take into consideration the pain that her father would feel with the loss of his daughter. They didn't take into consideration the pain that her mother, Mrs. Salamandra Robinson, would feel with the loss of her daughter. They didn't take into consideration the pain that her siblings would feel. Mrs. Quella, her sister, would feel in the loss of her sister. No consideration was taken, and yet her life was taken, all because they envied, hated, and were jealous of this young lady's life. So why is all of this important? And why did I feel compelled to do a stream tonight on this? Again, because I too understand the loss of a child. I want to share a short video. I just want to react to this video, and I want you to see, and I want you to also hear and feel the pain of this father and what he feels currently right now, especially in light of the fact that we have new information as it relates to the case of Shanquella Robinson, where the federal authorities, FBI, have decided to drop all charges. So compounding the awesome weight of grieving when you lose a loved one, now add this new information coming from government, where they're telling the family, we are no longer going to seek after charges because the evidence that we have available does not give enough ground, or does not give enough foundation, if you will, to pursue a prosecution in this case. Not to mention, there were 2 different autopsy results. The autopsy result that came from Mexico indicated that she suffered from what was called axis luxation, meaning her upper spinal cord area near her neck area was broken. In addition to that her spinal cord was severed, only to get back to the United States and undergo a secondary autopsy on U.S. soil, where those medical examiners then stated that she did not in fact have a broken neck, nor did she have a broken spinal column, and then indicated that Mexican medical officials had not performed an efficient autopsy to determine those injuries. So who do you believe? What should we believe? You know, it's a lot of funny things going on with this case, man. A lot of funny things going on with this case indeed. But I will continue to say that justice must be had for Miss Shanquella Robinson, and her family needs to get closure. They need to get closure. They need to get closure to a point where they can move on with their life. What's left of their life. These are not young people. These are not teenagers. Her mother is up in age, and so is her father. They need to get on with their life, but they also need justice before that inevitable day approaches. They need to get justice for their daughter. They deserve that justice. But I want to highlight what I detected from the father of Mrs. Shanquella Robinson. And again, my condolences go out deeply to the parents of Shanquella Robinson, Mrs. Salamandra Robinson, her mother, and her sister Quella, and her father, Mr. Bernard Robinson. My condolences sincerely go out to you. Sincerely go out to you. So I want to share this. It's going to be a short stream, but I want to share this video. So I'm going to share my screen if I will be allowed to do so. Let's see. Just bear with me for a minute, folks. Just bear with me for a minute. Just bear with me for a minute. Bear with me for a minute. And yeah, so I know many of us, again, like we've experienced this kind of thing in our family. It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon because pain takes on a whole entirely different language when it comes to the pain that we experience in our life. It really does. It takes on a whole entirely different language. And if we're not careful, we don't know quite how to respond. So I want to respond to this video. I'm making this quick video because it has been. Just give me a second. Bear with me, folks. Again, as you guys come into the room, tap the subscribe button and tap the share button. I appreciate your support. I truly do. Let's listen to what he says.
Martha came, so I brought you all out here today to let y'all know that Martha is down there. I can come, me and my mother, my family. I can come up here and talk to her. I know where she is. Because at first, I didn't know where I didn't even know she was over there. I talked to her that Wednesday before she passed transition over. I get a phone call from my mother saying that she transitioned over in Mexico.
I want you to note the fact that he said he didn't even know his daughter was where he's standing right now. He's standing in the cemetery where his daughter was buried, and there's a marker there, but he indicated he didn't even know she was there. So just take a mental note of that. These are the things that I'm discussing that I discussed in the very beginning. This is what happens in our families a lot of times when we're grieving. Unconsciously, we may discard others in the family that we love, not realizing either unconsciously or consciously. We may discard those and make them feel as though they're not important. So they'll be pushed out of events, they'll be pushed out of planning, they'll be pushed out of a lot of things. I've seen this with my own eyes in my own life and in my own family. I've seen it. And I'm sure that many of you that watch this stream, you probably have experienced it yourself in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Let's continue.
Then I get a phone call. The only thing I know, she talked to Cleo Cook, supposed to be her best friend, 2 times on the phone. I ain't know nothing about that. I just felt as a father that the way I love her, the way I raised her, that I should have had an opportunity. Maximum volume. That father advice or my opinion about going over there, in which I did. And and I know for a fact, from the bottom of my heart, we all might not even be standing out here if I had that opportunity to speak to her, even though she's 25 years old. Um, she grown, but still at the same time, I'm her protector until she get a husband. When she get a husband, then he become a protector. But as this father standing right here, I feel like I should have been her protector, and I was.
If you listen to what he said, folks, he said, as a father, I should have been a protector. We know traditionally that fathers who have daughters, our job as fathers is to protect our daughters until they are married, at which time we hand over the baton to the man that she marries, and then he, in turn, takes the position that we took as the father in protecting and providing for our daughters. I mean, think about it. In her life as she grows, what is the job of a father? His job is to protect and to provide for his daughter as well as his husband, as his wife. The women in our lives, that is our responsibility and our job, is to protect and to provide. So as a father, imagine the grief that he feels knowing that his natural inclination to provide and to protect his daughter was not only ripped from his ability by way of what happened in Cabo, Mexico, but even before she left to go to Cabo, Mexico, what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling from what he's saying in this video is that he was not informed at all, under no circumstances, about her plans of where she was going, being that this is his only daughter. He has no other children. This is his only daughter, folks. She was leaving the country to go overseas with individuals that he had never met, that he did not know, nor was he familiar with. But there were family members that were, and yet he was never made inclusive in knowing who these individuals were. And this was his only daughter. This is what I'm saying. Let's continue.
I would have asked her who she going with. how well do you know these folks? Then I would have came back and said, well, who their parents are. Well, before you go, let me meet these parents. Let me meet these folks. You know, I always been like that ever since she started beginning having a lot of friends. You know, as a father, you know, not trying to be in her business. It's just the point of making sure she okay and the folks that are around her, who she keeping company with. Because everybody can say you your friend, but they really not. It all depends on what you got and how you carry yourself. She carried herself very well, because that's our talk. You know, respect, morals. No, I never met her. Didn't know nothing about her. You know, only thing I know, her mother said they went to school with her, and she's gonna tell me, told me, well, you don't know them. So I said, do you know? She said, I know of them, but I'm seeing in the interview, you told your lawyer, Sue Robinson, that you just know one of them. That was Khalil Cook. So that tells me right there, we both was in the blind as a mother and a father.
You hear what he said, folks? He said the information he had, that what he saw and what he came to understand was that there was only one individual of the Cabo Six that was known by the family, and that was Khalil Cook. The others were unknown. Here's a young lady that goes 2,000 miles away from where she currently lives, where she was currently living, 2,000 miles away. And the only individual of the whole entire six that was well known or at least familiar with was one individual. That means the other five were unknown. Had this father had the opportunity, or at least been allowed the opportunity to intervene, or at least become knowledgeable of what was happening when she was planning to leave, perhaps, perhaps he could have intervened, and perhaps he could have said something to her to make her think twice about taking this trip with these five, I will say five for now, individuals that she was most familiar with, but of whom only one she actually trusted. And that would be Khalil Cook, who she considered her best friend. So her best friend is who she really could not trust, nor could she depend on for her safety. Now, couple that with five additional members who she knew she really didn't trust. She may have been familiar with them, but I guarantee you her trust level was not at the same level that it was with Khalil Cook. I can only imagine that under the attack that she endured, she was thinking in her mind as she found herself helpless, as she found herself in excruciating pain. Why is Khalil not defending me? Why is the person who I trust the most amongst this group, why is he not defending me? Why does he not care about what happens to me? I can only imagine her pain in that. And I will tell you, uh, I will say this to you, family. For those of us that have lost someone in our life, in our family, try with all your might to remove yourself from emotion and get clarity. Ask God for clarity, that you can see clearly those that are in front of you, that you trust, that you love, that you've lived with your entire life, so that you don't say the things that could either hurt, because words, again, are like bullets. I say it all the time. Words are like bullets. Once you say it, you can't take them back. Once they leave your mouth, you cannot take them back. Your actions, whether intentional or unintentional, based on your emotional state of mind while you're grieving, whether intentional again or unintentional, has to be monitored, because all we have is family. Family is the most important thing that we have. Outside of family, there is truly no real reason for living. You may say, well, God is our reason for living, but God gives us our family. So they both are conjoined together. We need our family. And we have to be careful when we're in the grieving process, not to hurt those that are still living amongst us, regardless of any past experience that we have had. Because I'll tell you this, regardless of any pain that we've experienced amongst family members, often, too often, to my sad regret, we have a very difficult time forgiving one another. And yet, we want to be forgiven ourselves. We're human. We make mistakes. But at the end of the day, I should say at the beginning of the day, we need to still remember that the most important thing we have amongst us in the flesh is our family members, our husbands, our wives, our children, our grandparents, our nieces, our nephews, our cousins, and any extended family members that we have by way of marriage, all of whom are important to us and our existence in this earth. Because when it's over, you can't take it back. We simply cannot take it back. I believe all of us need to get to a place where we can learn to govern ourselves, govern our speech, govern our attitudes, and govern how we treat one another. Because in the end, that's the testament. That is the final testament to us as a family. We have to do this. Again, my sincere condolence goes out to Mr. Salamandra Robinson. And I say always, justice for Shanquella Robinson. And my condolences and my sincere condolences go out to Mr. Bernard Robinson, her father, who I'm certain is grieving. There is not a day goes by that I don't grieve for my son. And he's been gone since 2014. He was 25 years of age. It doesn't get old. It gets easier, but there are days that it gets just as fresh as if it happened yesterday. So this never goes away for a parent when you lose a child. That's what makes it so much more important that we learn how to treat one another in these circumstances, because none of us can control life and death. Only God controls it. He determines who lives. He determines who dies. And since he's the only one that determines that, we have to be very careful of how we treat one another. We need to learn to love one another truly and look beyond each other's faults and see what each other need when the time comes that we absolutely need one another. This is what we have to do, lest we find ourselves lost, lest we find our families fragmented, unless we say things that we cannot take back. This is what I wanted to share with you all tonight. And I thank you all for getting on the stream tonight. Again, I said this would be a short stream. I am your host, Charles Chambliss of Let's Talk About It Now. And I thank all of you getting on the stream. Shout out to Althea for jumping on the stream. Shout out to Maddie C for getting on the stream. And Maddie, you have a question. Let me see. Maddie C, was the guy maybe gay and jealous of her? Hey, I'm not going to say that you're incorrect in saying that. I'm not going to say that you're incorrect in saying that. Like I said in my stream last night, Maddie, I don't believe a real man, a real masculine man would have stood there and watched a woman getting beaten. Just like I don't agree that a man who's a real masculine man would put his hand on a woman and beat her. I don't care what she said. There's nothing masculine about a woman being beat by a man, and there's nothing masculine about a man watching a woman being beat. You're the stronger vessel. They should have stepped in, Maddie. They should have stepped in. And I'll tell you, that's a good question. Yeah. And I imagine that they feel right now that they've dodged the bullet because the federal government has decided that they no longer want to pursue federal prosecution. I will tell you this, man. Justice delayed is justice denied. But one thing they can't escape, one thing they cannot escape is the justice from God. You may get away in the earth, but you will not get away. You will not get away. And I wish and I pray for justice for this family. I truly do. And I pray for justice for any family, no matter where they are, no matter what land mass they live on, whether it's in the United States or some foreign country. If an injustice has been had, there are eyes that see it that the physical eye cannot see. You will not get away. Justice for Shanquella Robinson. God's peace to her mother and her father in the loss of their daughter, who they will never physically see again on this side. They will never see her again. They will never see her again. Justice has to be had. I will say to the FBI, I will say to the United States Justice Department, the Department of Justice, and I will say to President Biden, do the right thing. Do the right thing, man. Do the right thing and give this family closure so they can continue on with their life, what's left. We as a people in this country, we are tired of suffering injustice continuously over and over again and being told to simply get over it. Just get over it. No, we're not getting over it. We're not getting over it. Give closure to where you see injustice. That's what you tell us to do. You tell us to put faith in the justice system. This is what you tell us. This is what you tell the American people, regardless of their nationality. You tell them to put faith in the justice system while you give justice to others and deny justice to us who built the country, who worked, sweat, bled, and died to help build the country. We have to fight and grovel and crawl for simple justices that we ask for, simple discriminations that we experience. We have to beg, crawl, protest, march, carve out justice for ourselves. Do the right thing, Mr. Biden. Do the right thing, White House. Do the right thing, FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Get busy doing your job and investigate. Not smoke screen the family of Mrs. Shanquella Robinson by telling them you're investigating. Anybody can sit on their hands for 5 or 6 months and then come out the closet and say, we've investigated and we can find no evidence. So disappointing, Mr. FBI agents. So disappointing. It's been 182 plus days since the death of Mrs. Shanquella Robinson, and yet the only thing you could come forth to tell her parents is that you don't have enough sufficient evidence to go forward with a federal prosecution. Very disappointing. And to the medical examiners who examined her after she was embalmed, after her father, Mr. Bernard Robinson, paid $6,000 to have her body transported from Mexico back to the United States. You tell him that you have no sufficient evidence to pursue a federal prosecution. You got to do better than that. You have to do better than that. You tell her mother, after she was lied to by those 6 individuals, that she died of alcohol poisoning, and they believed those individuals and allowed them in her home a day after their daughter was deleted from this earth and left in Mexico. They came to her parents' home the very next day. And her mother and her sister prepared dinner for them, and they sat down at her dining room table and ate dinner at her table and lied to that woman about what had actually happened in Mexico. It don't get no more wicked than that. That is the devil in your face. This family deserves justice, and we are not going to leave it alone. We're not going to leave it alone. I knew that this investigation would take a little while. I was under no delusion at all. I knew it would take potentially up to a year to solve this particular case because of the dynamics of the 2 land masses, Mexico and the United States. So I was really under no delusion. Pardon me 1 second, family. I was really under no delusion. I was under no delusion whatsoever. I knew it would take some time. But I did have a little bit of faith that it would not be dismissed and discarded the way it has been, although I'm not surprised. Justice has applied to many, but for us, it's been just us. It's been just us. Protesting, marching, pumping our fists, angry, upset, hurt, and disappointed at the fact that we cannot hope for justice in this government. So again, I thank all of you for getting on the stream tonight. That's all I really wanted to share tonight. I was moved by that video and very disturbed by this whole turn of events, as I'm sure many of you are. We're going to keep pushing for justice for Shanquella Robinson. And I would suggest no one gets tired and find it robbery that you continue hearing these kind of talking points as it relates to the justice for Miss Shanquella Robinson and the Robinson family, that you would stay just as excited, that you would stay just as vigilant, just as determined to see justice realized where this family is concerned. She did not die in vain. This young lady was 25 years of age. She had her whole life ahead of her, and it was taken and robbed. It was stolen from her. It was stolen from her. Like so many young people's lives have been stolen from them. This case, understand this as I close, is much bigger, much bigger than Shanquella Robinson. Why? Because this is your daughter. This is your granddaughter. This is your sister. This is your mother. This is your auntie. These are your female family members that could have easily been victim of the same thing. That's why it's bigger than Shanquella Robinson. That's why we cannot stop fighting for justice for her. She needs to lay and rest in peace. Right now, her mother and father, they can't even live in peace. And their daughter certainly can't rest in peace until we get justice. So again, with that being said, we are out. My name is Charles Chambliss. I'm the host of Let's Talk About It Now. I hope that all of you that came into the building hit the subscribe button and the share button. I appreciate you. Support the channel as we continue to press on for justice for Shanquella Robinson. And with that being said, we are out. Love you. Love you, family. Have a good night, folks.